Hello, Renegade marketers. If this is your first time listening, welcome. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. You're about to listen to a recording from CMO Huddles Studio, our live show featuring the flocking awesome B2B marketing leaders of CMO Huddles. In this episode, Jakki Geiger, Dave Steer, and Sandy Ono get into the balancing act between AI-powered automation and human creativity. They talk about why speed isn't the same as volume, how automation works best when it shortens the distance between insight and action, and why marketers still need to bring judgment, originality, and creative spark that the machines cannot fake. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. You'll be supporting our quest to be the #1 B2B marketing podcast. All right, let's dive in. Welcome to CMO Huddle Studio, the live streaming show dedicated to inspiring B2B awesomeness. I'm your host, Drew Neiser, live from my home studio in a beautiful day in New York City. Today, we are tackling one of the great balancing acts of modern marketing, which is how do you blend automation and human ingenuity without losing the magic that makes brands memorable? And because while AI is making everything faster and we're focused on efficiency, the question in my mind is there an opportunity for CMOs and their teams to turn that speed into speedy creativity? In the old days, we'd say, well, you can have a good and fast or cheap, and you had to pick two. Right now, we're trying to figure out, can we work with machines to scale them and have humans deliver the spark? Or will speedy creativity remain an oxymoron? So lots to cover. With that, let's bring on Jakki Geiger, CMO of Arango, and a returning guest who has previously appeared on the show to discuss many topics, including building the marketing team's AI acumen, which is relevant for today, category creation, and moving up market. Hello, Jakki. How are you and where are you this fine day?
Hi, Drew. I'm doing great. I'm actually at home in my home office in San Francisco Bay Area and fresh off of the NVIDIA conference where Jensen Huang talked about crossing the threshold. Everyone's going to have AI teammates. So I think this topic is really timely.
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about that. Wow, that must have been very cool. Let's talk a little bit about AI and your marketing workflow. And, I think there's a lot of folks are talking about, yeah, you got to keep a human in the loop. But what's this look like right now?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. I joined Arango 6 months ago with a charter, right? We were very well-established 10-year-old company known for technology called multi-model or graph database technology. And we got a new chief product officer who came in and said, I came from JP Morgan Chase. I see a vision here that this could be the foundation, the contextual data layer for all AI agents. We need to really ramp up our messaging, our positioning, rebrand, and launch a preview of our product at the NVIDIA conference in October. So that gave me 60 days to figure it out with no team. Like I had a couple people borrowed from other parts of the organization. So how was I going to make that happen? Like Drew, you and I know in my previous role, that took 9 months, right? So I had 60 days to think through, how do we differentiate ourselves in this market where everyone's talking about an AI data platform? How do we create a unique brand identity that stands out in a sea of sameness? And how do we launch a functional website that aligns with the buyer journey in 60 days? So we're ready to go at this big event. And I would not have been able to do it without AI and a trusted agency partner. For me, that was the killer combination. There was a lot I could do with AI, but the creativity, the brand identity, the really solid taglines and really key words that we associate ourselves with, like Frankenstack, that came from human creativity, not from AI.
And I love that story because that is a reality for lots and lots of folks. And I mean, I'm imagining that some of the, you can, from a strategic standpoint, you can do a lot of the background work to look for the white space, if you will. So that kind of thing you can accelerate. Often though with positioning, because you're talking about repositioning your product, there's some research involved and you must have had to skip some steps or use synthetic to sort of help you feel confident that your new positioning in brand ID were, creative and on target.
Yes. So I believe in creating a customer advisory board that is AI driven, right? So one of the first things I did was start creating digital twins. Digital twin for our chief product officer, digital twin for our CEO. So I could quickly start putting out thought leadership content and start driving SEO and AEO, right? AI engine optimization by having relevant content that people are searching for. But I think also having customer personas as digital twins is useful. That said, Drew, I didn't want to take that alone, right? I made sure that we spoke with existing customers, validated our messaging and positioning to ensure that we also had a real human perspective. And I wasn't betting everything on AI because I don't 100% feel confident in it yet to be able to say that was sufficient, that was enough.
I love it. So we had the digital twins, and then you could verify, you to sort of trust but verify. And having those digital twins, I'm imagining, is incredibly important. Let's talk about the creative spark. You talked about using an agency to help you do it. Talk a little bit about specifically what they did versus the sort of the development work that you did using AI.
Yeah, so I truly believe that if you have a certain skill set and experience base, you're going to get better outcomes from AI than someone who doesn't, right? So I am not like a natural born graphic designer who has years of experience behind me. My agency does. So they were able to accelerate their work with the use of AI because they're experts at what they do. I would probably have more of a mediocre outcome if I tried to do it on my own. And I didn't want a mediocre outcome. I needed to stand out in a sea of sameness. We wanted differentiation. So it's a real balancing act. I think every member of my team, whether it's agency or not, uses AI to augment themselves, to make themselves more productive as a thought partner as well, to validate things. To me, it's, you talk about human in the loop. For me right now, because this is such a new space moving so fast, I'm absolutely keeping humans in the loop on every process today.
And you talk about the importance of expertise here. And this is an existential issue that we're going to get into a little bit, but these are senior people with senior experience that you trust and that are going to bring to it. It's like, how are those people going to get to be senior, the others to get, but that's a different topic. So is there a specific creative outcome that you're really proud of that's this combination of AI plus human that resulted in something that feels creative and distinctive and differentiated?
Yeah. So for me, it's Frankenstack. So as you know, when you're a AI leader and developer at any enterprise company, whether you're a bank or the US Air Force or you're working for HPE, doesn't matter. You have to actually handcraft multiple databases together with pipelines. And we started thinking about it. I'm like, they're building a Frankenstack. It was just like a word that came into my head. And then my agency helped create it. And we built an entire explainer video, that powerful day in the life. We understand the pain you're going through. And we both used a combination of AI and human creativity to bring that explainer video to life.
Yeah, I love that idea. And I can so see how many different places you could go with that. What's your Frankenstack look like, and research on Frankenstack, and definitely a wonderful. And what you've done is you've named the problem, which is so important. And you've named it in a very sort of easy to understand way. And of course, now you need to show that you solve that problem. And the creative spark there is amazing. I wanted to just, before we sort of move on, I wanted to make sure you talked about needing also a new website. I'm curious if you actually built that using any of the tools like a Lovable or some of the things that are fast builds, but maybe problematic, or how did you get your website done quickly?
Yeah. So when I started, my CPO said, "Hey, I already built something on Lovable." So it's great for prototyping.
Right.
But if you actually want to bring it into production and scale it, like that is not a good path forward. So we wanted to make sure we built it properly on a strong foundation so we could continue to, it's a product, right? Version one came out in October. We're already on version 4 of the website that I launched, right? So we want to make sure we have scalability and best practices and templates and everything you need so it's easy to manage.
Yeah, and I'm going to put a pin in that. Any of you, look, if you're a solo entrepreneur and you want to build a website on Lovable, knock yourself out. It's great. You could do it in a quick minute, and you probably create something that'll blow you away. But if you're a business with various needs, including websites that load quickly, you're going to need something a little more substantial, that has more security, particularly if data is going through it. So the notion that you can build a website in a day, probably not real today. So Frankenstack was the idea. Is there any sort of other like creative thing that you took that idea and brought it to life?
So in our campaigns, right? So now it's like, well, how do we bring this to companies that are in the cybersecurity market? How do we bring Frankenstack to the customer support teams who are struggling with this? So taking that and bringing it to a more tailored, industry specific language that would resonate with those target prospects is how we're using AI.
Interesting. And so I'm imagining that if, and I'm just making up an industry, if you're in the travel industry, your Frankenstack is very different than, say, a commercial bank. And that's sort of how you're going with it. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Absolutely. So everyone's got their own version of the Frankenstack. And so we can have that conversation. As you mentioned, it's a great launching off point, not just as a marketing asset, but for sales, right? Like, let's show you with the Frankenstack. What does yours look like? Oh, you're using this technology here and that technology there. Like, it's a discovery tool as well.
And I sort of love, maybe by design or accidentally, I mean, you were certainly tapping into the zeitgeist. Frankenstein is having a moment. The bride is coming out. So it's fun, it's hip, and I think I'm guessing, but the tech community kind of embraced that, the whole Frankenstein thing. So anyway, very cool. Thank you for sharing that. Now it is time to bring on Dave Steer, CMO of Webflow. And, Dave, your ears must have been, as we were talking about websites that are sustainable, you must have been going, yeah, well, wait.
I was going to say, what a great segue, Drew. That couldn't have been a better planned segue.
You know what? I try to tee things up for you, Dave. Just really make this really easy. So Dave is a CMO of Webflow, and he's joining the show for the first time. So Dave, hello, welcome. How are you and where are you?
I'm in San Francisco. I'm doing quite well. And, the whole expression of first time caller, long time listener, I've been watching this for a long time. I'm super thrilled to be here. And for all of you tuning in, Drew and I have known each other for years. So it's an honor to be invited. Thanks, Drew.
I love it. Well, let's put a nice bow on the Webflow thing. And we're actually working with Webflow right now, the tool, because our community website, Wild Apricot, just doesn't have any AEO, SEO capabilities at all. So we're putting a shell using Webflow, and that's been a great experience. But why is it that these, at least in your experience, these sort of insty websites just can't compete right now?
Well, so I think first of all, Jakki was speaking my language, and so what she said about the Frankenstack, we see as well. And the problem statement sort of behind that is, we speak to lots of different people who are involved sort of in the marketing mix, from, the CMO and VP of marketing to the teams that support them and their agencies. And what we see with the Frankenstack is when they're spending more time trying to manage that stack versus actually doing the job, that becomes the problem. So what Jakki said lands really, really well, first of all. And then second of all, speed is important, and vibe coding or using LLMs to get a prototype up, or even to get version 1 of your website experience up, is pretty cool. The problem is that speed isn't a actual differentiator anymore, because everyone has access to these tools. And so a lot of the conversation that's happening right now is about speed, but the problem is few people are talking about, what does day 2 look like? Right. And if you're actually building a website and a web experience that is aimed at growth, where you need a context layer in place and a system in place, you're not going to get there by prototyping your way to that. And so the whole conversation about speed, yes, it's important, not a differentiator anymore. And I like to think about it. It's interesting because you said that Frankenstein is sort of having its time in the limelight right now. Formula One is also having its time in the limelight. And I think about the distinction between this argument is, it's the difference between Formula One and drag racing. Anyone can do one speed lap, one really fast lap. But when you're actually having to build a system for the long haul, and that's what Formula One is, over 50 laps, that's where you actually need, agentic web marketing platform that's not just the website experience, but has all of the infrastructure in place.
I love it. Okay, well, great little message. Go to webflow.com, check it out. And by the way, they also have another, I can't help it, I'm just plugging you all the way. They're also, if you go to webflow.com/AEO, you can get a great AEO report on your website. All right, but let's talk about the topic at hand, which is AI. Your content teams are using it more and more and more. I am so worried about slop, and I'm seeing so much slop. I'm just wondering how you are managing this balance of, yeah, we can create an infinite number of blog posts and white papers and research reports, and yeah, but it's not really great stuff. So how are you balancing that speed versus creativity when it comes to content creation?
I think my message broadly is volume is not the win, velocity is. So I said a little bit earlier that speed to publish the website isn't sort of the difference anymore, but speed in being able to create content and adapt content, that becomes extraordinarily important. The distinction for all of us to keep in mind is it's not about the volume, it's about the velocity. And so as an example, I think most teams use AI to make just more stuff. So the question is whether that stuff is actually doing anything. And for us, what we've seen with our team, and we like to think of our team as sort of customer zero for the agentic web marketing platform, because we're using it every day and we're thinking about the content that we create and how it syncs back into our CMS. So we're experimenting a lot with this. The advantage really comes with the automation that compresses the loop between insight and action. And so to get to the question, which is what's the role of AI and automation versus the role of people, it's really once you've compressed insight and action, you free people up to be the creative strategists that they are. And so as an example, and apropos to what we're doing right now, we have found that webinars are extraordinarily effective. First of all, people love this type of format where you can go deeper with subject experts to really understand the context of what's happening and really get insights. But what we've also found is that that content can then be used over and over and over and over again in different kinds of formats. So for us, every webinar that we do has unique expert insights in it. We built actually an agentic workflow that takes the transcript, identifies topics and key insights from it, extracts quotes and keywords, and then generates new content assets that we could put out there. So it's a really simple workflow. And what we've seen, and the data has proved, is that we see 330 plus new citations from FAQ automation that comes from webinar-driven content, and a 24% increase in impressions. So it's not only like the philosophy behind it, but the data is now proving out that if we look at like this one form of content and then spread it out with automation, we're going to see real business impact.
And there's so much to unpack there, and I want to make sure that folks understand what was happening. So the first level here is you need original high quality content as a result, which we'll call your webinar, right? So you have the video asset there. Now you've created a workflow that takes that transcript, analyzes that transcript, says, oh, well, we can have a YouTube video here, or we can extract blog posts, or we can extract, as you said, FAQs. And all of that happens automatically, or is there a human in the loop checking it still?
There's a human in the loop and a person in the loop before we hit publish to make sure that the content is right, that it didn't hallucinate. And it's interesting because you take a look at different types of people that we have on our team. There are, what we're increasingly seeing is, there are the strong generalists, like let's say a person in demand generation who can be in product marketing as well. But there's also what I've heard in the industry and I really like, which is based on sort of the T-shaped marketer, which is the deep T, the really deep subject expert in an area. And so for an automation like this, you really want your deep T to be able to look at the content before we hit publish to make sure that it's right. And so the cool thing about this whole model is if you do it right, and I think our team is, you have this distinction between what the people do on the team and how they work with AI and automation together to free them up. So as the example we're talking about, the last thing in the world that I would want is Drew the agent and Dave the agent to be having a conversation with each other that has no insight and then just to regurgitate that insight. So here is like two, I'll just say, subject matter experts having an in-depth conversation that's very nuanced, that from which we're going to be able to create, or hopefully you'll be able to create, a lot of great content from it.
Well, it's funny because one of the reasons we're migrating to SQL is so that we can enhance that and be able to do this a lot more effectively, because the tools are making these things a lot easier, and which is another conversation of build versus buy, but it's interesting how that is going to enable us to do that faster. It's funny, I know at least one person named Deep T, and I'm just thinking that that's a kind of a fun t-shirt, Deep T, but Makes a lot of sense. And this is the thing I've been worried about a lot with AI generated writing, for example. If you're a mediocre writer and you don't know much about the subject, whatever it comes up with is going to look good.
Yeah, and it's got full conviction, so you're going to believe it really quickly because the AI makes it as if it is infallible and all of that. And that's why I think, it's super important as we build the prototypical AI native, real marketing team. What does that team really look like? And I think the deep T is important. That block, that generalist is important. And then you brought up earlier, and it's worth going deeper, maybe not right now, but what do you do with early career entrants? And how do you make sure that there's an on-ramp for these people to build the skills and to get the 10,000 hours to gain expertise? And we over here at Webflow have been thinking a lot about that as we build out our team.
Yeah, I hope more companies are. It's funny, I wrote one of my Saturday rants on LinkedIn about this, and I cited one of my early bosses at JWT, Marty Seuss, who, when he edited my document, whatever I wrote, it could have been a call report or a presentation, it came back and it looked like a redacted CIA file. I mean, it was just red. But after 3 months, I got good. There was a lot less red, and it was very gratifying, but I learned business writing as a result of that. And look, the first article you write is not going to be very good, but if you practice and you have an editor, you can get there. So that's a whole nother thing that we can talk about. But we do need to move on, maybe to our next guest, and then we'll come back to this, and maybe she'll have an opinion on it. So let's welcome Sandy Ono, who is joining the show for the very first time as well. Hello, Sandy. Thank you for your patience.
Hey, Drew, how's it going?
All good. But so how are you and where are you? I mean, you look like you're at a magnificent, fancy house somewhere.
I'm in a magnificent fake fancy house behind me, but I am in the Bay Area in California as well with Dave and Jakki.
Interesting. Well, you heard both Dave and Jakki talk about sort of their thinking on this. I'm wondering if there were any notes that you took that sparked your just went, oh yeah, that makes sense, or anything that you heard so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely resonate with what Jakki and Dave have said. And, I was thinking about this, how you really balance automation and human creativity. And one of the things that they reminded me of is, I worked at OpenText as the CMO there, rather larger organization. And if you work at any larger tech organization, you suffer from highly matrix organizations. And one of the things my team and I were doing was really actually breaking down our decision levels. Just like you have campaign levels 1, 2, and 3, what are your decisions level 1, 2, and 3? And that was both to decentralize the decision making in our organization so you can go faster, but also got us ready for AI. What would you be ready for somebody else to make a decision on and a machine to make a decision on? So I found that to be kind of foundational in how you actually take your organization through change. And then you layer on, well, where do you need low fidelity and where do you need high fidelity? So in our brainstorming, our creative campaign ideation, low fidelity, right? Really fast ideas that could just spew out. I had an in-house agency that could just come up with graphics, and it was low fidelity and it was all okay. But when we got to like competitive marketing, where we had to say our technology versus somebody else's technology, we had to be high fidelity, analyst backed. So once you kind of break down your decision levels, know where you need high fidelity, low fidelity, it helps you answer these questions around what should be automated and what still needs a human in the loop.
And it's interesting because we're using the word creativity, but what we're really, I think, getting at is your brand distinct? Are your stories distinctive? Are you telling them in a way that is distinctive? And we're sort of calling that creativity. Do you anticipate that we are going to be able to very quickly just say, hey, the bot can make the decision because it's a low fidelity thing for anything to do with creative that a human is going to consume?
I don't think so, but I think we have to open our minds and say it's possible. I was thinking about, how do you really think about test and learn differently? If you've been in marketing for your career, you're like, okay, you come up with the campaign, the idea, and then you go test and learn. You spray out 5 ideas and see what works, and you measure it. Well, test and learn is so much more at the front of the cycle now. And how do you really need to flip it on its head and say, well, where do I get, as Jakki mentioned, right? The agent, the machine feedback. How do I get the human feedback? And what does that look like? And I think it's going to press us all to act differently, because you know what? Some stuff that we as humans actually wouldn't think works might work. So we actually need different mechanisms to capture the reaction of our customers and our partners and our employees, and be able to bring that back in a different way, I think.
Well, and you bring up a really interesting point that I'm sort of going down a rabbit hole here, but it's funny when you talk to people who are A/B testers or doing email outbound, they'll often tell you the straightforward offer or email or heading or landing page works better, right? And if you think about AI and what it reads, if an agent goes to your website, take Jakki, they're not going to know what a Frankenstack is, right? That's a big idea. Then it will immediately resonate with humans and it will create. So in some ways, we have to design parallel universes where the clarity is essential for the machine, but the creativity and the sort of the memorableness of an idea is for the human. And that's going to be a very tricky thing to balance.
Yeah, well, it's been talked about quite a bit in the last couple of months about how we design marketing now for the humans versus the machines, and it's a parallel world. I was also thinking about, as Dave was talking, how speed is the name of the game, but as marketers, our job is to balance speed versus consistency. Because when you think about SEO, GEO, what the machines need, they need consistency. Consistency, not just in 3 places, but 3,000 places. Consistencies in the words you use. So often that's really the trade-off, right? Which is how many times am I reinforcing an idea so it actually takes hold in the market? Or how much is it just, I'm actually just trying to tell the story differently, but it's the same thing at the core. And I think when you know the difference between what you're doing, reinforcing the past for consistency or introducing something new, it allows you to be able to answer some of those decision points.
Yeah, I could get very depressed very quickly in this conversation for one reason, in that if decisions or searches increasingly happen in LLMs, the LLM is going to go to the website. Clarity is going to matter, how many FAQs you have in all your schema and all that other good stuff. And the creative notion of a brand actually having some mind share that sticks in there is irrelevant at that moment until a human has to make the decision. But there's going to be a lot of people who will say, well, we got discovery. And so let's just move it all to this very straightforward, pragmatic kind of a thing. And you could see creativity kind of fading away.
Yeah, so don't get depressed, Drew, because we're so
Thank you.
human, right? And I think we've chatted about this before, but it's really interesting how quickly the human eye can detect the machine-generated content. And I'll use my favorite example, press releases, right? We all first used, LLMs for generate me a press release. And I know in my teams that as I review every press release that's good out the door, you're like, that sounds like a machine. Stop
Right.
sounding like a machine. So I think that humans will be able to discern. And I think if you think about, all great B2B marketing really appeals to a person and an individual at the end of the day, that relevance factor is going to take creativity. And we all know we live in a digital and physical world. So I think the creativity is going to come in experience. The creativity is going to come in how you actually engage. And I think if you think around all the mechanisms we have as marketers to actually take somebody down the path of being engaged with your brand, there's a lot of places for creativity. And maybe hopefully, as Dave said, just the speed's faster now.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's funny because, on LinkedIn, you'll be looking at the feed and you'll suddenly see a creative booth. Somebody actually created an interesting experience at a booth. And I think, we're going to sort of be in this place where if it involves humans and it's face-to-face, we might see a lot more creativity. But if it doesn't, I don't know. And again, it all depends on what you're measuring. That's right. And if we're measuring showing up on an LLM, we may not make the same decisions as we are showing up in the brain of the humans in our target.
Exactly, right? How do you measure memorability? And that spark that you drive with a piece of interesting thing that you hook somebody in. And, a lot of big brands or growing brands also aspire to tell a story, right? So you see a lot more brands doing documentaries. You do see a lot more brands actually taking different mechanisms to be able to express that creativity. So I hope it opens up more new doors. I'm an optimist in this one, Drew.
I love it. Well, and generally I am too. I just need to see more creativity. And when I hear things, you hear, and this I think is a part of that. This starts to matter. A famous a story. The gentleman who was in charge of marketing for Absolute Vodka, when they had that whole art series that just took the world by storm, and Absolute grew in record numbers. He once saw a person who did not fit the brand wearing a T-shirt, and he paid the guy $100 to give him the T-shirt right off his back, so this person wasn't wearing the brand, which I love. That speaks to every impression matters. We've been having a conversation with Good Enough, and you talked about low fidelity. Are there things in this, like a press release? Good enough is good enough? And how do you make those decisions?
Yeah, I really do think it's kind of drawing this dial between, are you reinforcing the past, something that's out there, or are you actually creating the future? As Jackie talked about, right? When you're positioning a company and trying to create that clarity, I think every detail matters. Maybe I'm just an old school marketer like that, right? But every word matters. Everything around that matters for a consistent amount of time until it takes hold. So I think the reinforcing of something that's already existing, you can allow for more low fidelity because you get speed and be open to the notions that have existed forever about user created content, right? You don't control the community in which they hold on to your brand. So I think that drawing those dials between what's forward looking versus what's past looking is helpful.
Yeah. And I think in David's example of where we've got the webinar, which we put a lot of energy into making sure it's high value. Now you can pull the other stuff out there because it was already high value to begin with. All right. Thank you for that. Bringing optimism back into the creative marketing world. We're trying it here all on our own. So with that, it's time for me to talk about CMO Huddles. We launched in 2020. CMO Huddles is the only community of flocking awesome B2B marketing leaders, and that has a logo featuring penguins. Wait, what? Yes. Well, a group of these curious, adaptable, and problem-solving birds is called a huddle. And the leaders in CMO Huddles are all that and more, huddling together to conquer the toughest job in the C-suite. Now, fortunately, we have three incredibly busy, talented marketing leaders with us today who are members of our community. And I'm wondering if any of you, Jakki, Dave, Sandy, have anything you can share about a recent how CMO Huddles has helped you. And Jakki, you've been with us the longest. I'll let you answer first.
Yeah. So for me, in times of transformation, you need a tribe, you need a community of people to lean on so you can learn faster than trying everything just out on your own. So I will say the most impactful experience I've had with CMO Huddles was actually, Sandy, I met you there at the Super Huddle in Palo Alto, and just really hearing from the leaders in the space. What are other marketing leaders doing? What are they testing? What are they learning? What's working? What's not working? Having Lisa, right, talk about how she's using AI, building teammates for others and sharing that knowledge. I was able to set up a lot of one-on-one kind of monthly check-ins with people. We talk about first team, and we talk about managing our marketing teams and how we overcome challenges, interviewing for new roles, that kind of thing. So I found this community to be incredibly valuable, and it's been a good investment of time and effort.
Thank you, Jakki. I can't help but note that we have our Super Huddle 2026 coming up in October this year, October 22nd, 23rd. It's a day and a half long event. Sandy, you've been with us, for like a better part of a year. Anything helpful for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd echo Jackie's shout out on that Super Huddle. It just opened my mind. Vendors you meet, technologies you hadn't heard of, really peers behind closed doors, sharing and caring and daring together. So I'm going to steal that framework, Drew, but it was great. I'd also say I'm in transition, right? I'm going from one job to another. I found the transition labs to be quite helpful because, tech is volatile. And it's always good to be in good spirits with others. We're always very practical. So I've personally found that quite helpful over the last couple of months.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you and kind words. And Dave, kind of welcome back.
Thank you. I'm like, again, so Drew, I'm going to say some stuff, Drew, you're going to blush, but Drew is nothing short of inspirational. And so I'm a first-time CMO. But I met Drew like years ago. And so on my pathway into this seat, Drew was very helpful to me to understand, what it takes to be a CMO in this day and age, and the things that I need to be thinking about, and the community that is created. So I have a little story, which is in the super huddle that we've been talking about. Drew talked about the origin story of the huddle, and it goes something like this. Drew, you probably would tell it better, but the temperature difference on the inside of a huddle of penguins versus the outside of a huddle is many, 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 many degrees in Arctic temperature. And it was a perfect metaphor to think about how marketing leaders and marketers come together in a safe environment to share stories about what's working and what's not working and really build community. It was so inspirational to me that I had an all-team offsite 2 weeks later, and I used that as the theme for all of us. So Drew, that is my story about huddles.
I appreciate all three of you. Dave, thank you for that story. By the way, the differential temperature is 70 degrees. It's pretty amazing, 70 degrees. If you're a B2B marketing leader who wants to build a stronger peer network, gain recognition as a thought leader, and get your very own stress penguin, I got one over here, please join us at CMOHuddles.com. Okay, we have a lot to cover in a short period of time, but hey, we're in the internet AI age, so just put on your AI hat to answer these questions really fast. No, so let's talk about what is working sort of to scale output. I know, Dave, you without learn, and this is the part, distinctiveness of brand, right? We are in the business of differentiation. And I know, Dave, you provided a thing, but so maybe Jakki, talk a little bit about scaling that output.
Yeah, that's a challenge for me. I have the same, I guess, approach than Sandy does. I'm very meticulous about the message, right? If it's for AI SEO, like I want the chat answer that comes up for us to be spot on aligned with our messaging. I truly believe that consistency of message builds trust, right? If you have inconsistent messaging across different channels, like, do they even know what they're talking about? Is that their old company or new company? Or like, so for me, the message really matters. What we do is we create pillar content. We talked about, I think you used a different word, but original high quality content. I call that like a pillar piece. So that one is meticulously crafted using AI absolutely as a thought partner, but it must be completely approved even at my level, right? And then what we can do is take that and use AI to spin off blogs that are reviewed by product marketing, just for sanity checking, making sure everything's accurate, complete, anything's missing, that type of thing. So we do the spin off content, I call it snackable content, using AI largely with just a human review. But the pillar piece to me is, someone's providing their contact information. It's really got to be delivering value to that persona, or they're not going to trust you the next time you put a form in front of them, right?
Yeah. I'd like to see all forms go away, just if we can vote, because I just don't think that name is really worth that much to you. And if they really want to contact you, they will do it because of the quality of content. But different issue here. Mm-hmm. I love this notion of consistency and trust. I just finished Trust Matters More Than Ever by David Horsager. Consistency is one of those things. And yet we're at this moment where, particularly if you have a founder CEO who may come in and do swimming and got a big idea and say, I think we should change our positioning. And then suddenly, oh, you were not this, you're not this, you're now this. And that creates some challenges. So I'm wondering, so how are you dealing with the market feels like it's moving fast, things are changing, and this rush to change, like we're going this way, nope, we're going this way. Dave, how do you manage it?
Well, I mean, I think Jakki and Sandy are right. Consistency is important. And yet we also operate in a world where categories are changing so frequently that you'll be in a company that has product market fit one day, and then 2 weeks later is out of product market fit. And so for me, the really important thing is to make sure the positioning strategy and the messaging strategy and the strategic narrative are on point and aligned across the company. And so that's where the consistency has to happen. And then from there, you can have different ways of telling that story, but it all has to ladder back to the positioning strategy and what you're trying to say. Number one. And then number two, there will be times when companies have to revisit the positioning strategy given what's happening in the market. And so having a system in place internally that enables cross-functional stakeholders to come together and really think through how you're positioned, I think really matters a lot too.
Yeah. I mean, do you have a brand GPT that you use? Because I know a number of folks in our community do. Have you, Jakki or Dave, you're nodding your head. You have a brand GPT?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll just be super quick. I'm super interested to hear what Jakki and Sandy think about this. But So we do have a brand GPT. We actually have a Claude, a Claude skill as well. The important part of that is to make sure that the right people are creating it and that you've officially sanctioned it, right? Because anybody can create a skill and you can put the word brand on it, but it actually has to be done, again, back to my comment about the deep T, it has to be done by the people who've got subject matter expertise and domain expertise in creating brand systems. So the thing that I would say on that as guidance is that brand has to exist in a system, not a style guide. It's got to be, there has to be a system in place for it.
Interesting. And Sandy, I'm curious in terms of, because OpenText was a big company and did a lot of different things. How did you manage consistency, yet you got to pivot at times and markets change?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's use our favorite example on positioning, right? I think we are 24 months into this AI journey, everybody rushing to it. And most of us need to push our peers to be clear and simple about who we are, right? I think the technology stack is much clearer now to everybody. Are you at the infra layer? Are you at the software layer? Are you somewhere in between? So less words, more about the problems we solve. Those simple concepts come right back around AI. And we can't forget about it, right? We got stuck in the technology for a little bit, and now clarity has to break through. And then back on the point around scale, I think a lot about global nature, right? When the corpus and the core is right, you can get localized and regionalized a lot faster now. And that's where you can embrace this technology. Like we can do webinars in 10 different languages and have that syndicate out to those local teams so it resonates with customers a lot better. You can do customer advisory boards and different mechanisms now. So I think the global nature of how you can take your company and brand faster to different regions is a huge upside for a lot of us.
And what's interesting, I suspect in this globalization, the translation, yeah, it's amazing. It could do it really fast and so forth. But there's probably still a human in the loop because translation software is not perfect. And it may miss a dialect, it may use a word wrong. So you still, right? You can't just put that out there. Or if you do,
yeah. Well, forever we've thought that, brands have been freedom within a framework, right? I remember learning that 20 years ago. Freedom within a framework as you go to all the local markets. Now you just have technology to help you, but it allows the humans to focus on the actual regionalization and make it special. But you get 80% of the work done, which is pretty cool.
Yes, you get 80% of the work done. Extraordinary, because that you can get it that far that fast. And obviously that speeds everything up. And in theory, if there's a translator at the other end, they're able to spend their time adding higher level of value, right? Which is, again, sort of what we all hope is that these machines are augmenting us and getting us to focus on more of the high value things. And so a subject matter expert, as Dave, you talked about, can deliver that. So, all right, where's it falling short? I mean, come on, it can't all be working. I keep working on certain projects in Claude and it says it's going to do something and we go on and we spend an hour to it. And the end of it, it's like, oh, sorry, I can't actually go and scrape the web for you the way I wanted you to do it. So this app that we were working on that looks so good and that I had a prototype doesn't work. So where are you seeing some areas particularly in creative where this stuff isn't working as well as you would like?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give an example. So coming back to the Frankenstack and the explainer video, AI definitely was helpful, but like it would produce in 8-second increments, right? So there's the script, here's the style, here's the voice. That's all AI generated, but it was like 8-second clips. And so it was just very painstaking work. So I see it. It was helpful. It'll become better over time. It still hallucinates, right? Even with these digital twins, it'll come up with something like, where did you get that? Or you forgot this, or we don't spell it like that when this is the right order. So it's still not 100% reliable, which is why I say I'm not ready to just say, I have an AI teammate that just operates on their own. For me, the human in the loop is still very important because in the world of AI, the currency is trust. And I don't 100% trust it yet, right? So until I get to that point, there's always going to be some human in the loop. But yeah, it's definitely not perfect. It's like the beginning stages of any technology. I think it was at a toddler stage, right? When it launched in 2023, right? So it's a toddler, but it's going to get better and better. And I'm really optimistic, like Sandy is and Dave is, about how it's going to get better and help us be more productive and help us do things we couldn't even imagine before.
Well, and as almost everybody in technology with AI talks about is whatever you're using today is as bad as it ever will be. And I'm so happy you mentioned the AI video, because last year I went through this whole process of creating the 60-second promo video for our super huddle, and we ended up doing a expert huddle on it with a couple of the coaches and folks that helped me, and it was so primitive. And so I'm really interested to see how far it is advanced. I suspect there will still be lots and lots of challenges for someone like me to create what I would consider a highly professional video using these tools like without pros in the loop. Sandy, any thoughts on where you'd like to see AI improve from a creativity standpoint?
Here's a challenge that I've run into, which is I knew that the promise of agents is to actually automate workflows, but I didn't have documented process flows. You just gotta do the work. So how do you actually reimagine processes to be able to get the maximum productivity, right? And that's really reimagining things. So I'm sure there's different ways and I can learn more about how to do it, but I think that's where it's gonna go, because workflows and agents, especially cross-functional, how do you use it for that type of creativity, right? Not just like visual creativity and marketing creativity, but process creativity. Can you push yourself to those domains?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a big subject at our strategy labs. Dave, how long before we have your team has an agent that is your creative director?
Very long, and I like the way Jakki put it. In an age of AI, trust is the currency. I think that is a really important thing for all of us to really internalize. There's a phrase that I think about a lot, which is the technology changes, but the principles stay the same. The notion of trust was important decades and decades ago in our profession. It will be important decades from now. I think we're also entering into a golden age of creativity. And my sense is what's happening, and why I was so quick to answer, it's going to be a very long time until I have an agentic creative director, is the mundane work, the rote work is going away. That is freeing up the time for my creative director and his team and the teams that surround him to do the truly human work of creativity. I remember the first time that I went to like AWS reInvent. This is before AI, and I went into the floor, and Jakki, I think you said this, or Sandy, it was like the sea of sameness in all the booths. And I think we're entering in this golden age of creativity, because now it's going to be who stands out. Where's the creative spark? And we're going through an exercise right now. I'm not going to scoop myself. We've got a big campaign that's coming up in the next 2 to 3 weeks. It wasn't the agents coming in to help us figure out what the campaign was going to be. It was about 25 people working together, brainstorming in real time to come up with programming that I think is going to be really breakthrough.
That story warms my heart, Dave. I'm so, as someone who spent a lot part of their career coming up with some of these ideas for many wonderful companies, and knowing and having had the experience of creating something that humans actually enjoyed experiencing, there's a lot of joy in that process, and I'd hate to see it go away. However, but there will be agents on your team though, right, Dave?
There will be, yes, of course, there are going to be agents on the team. Today, actually, we just rolled out, not today, in the past couple of weeks, everyone has a chief of staff. So just like there's the digital twin of the chief product officer and all of that, we've actually given everyone a Claude chief of staff, so they have somebody to work with. And from there, we're going to build skills on top of it, and then workflows kind of with teams. So there will be a huge part of the team that is the non-human part of the team. It's just, we're going to keep sacred the roles that we think that people need to play.
Okay, well, my key takeaway, before I ask you your key takeaway, is that at least for the moment, AI creativity is not an oxymoron, but to be determined as we move forward. So I would love it if each of you could provide one lesson from today's discussion that can help marketing leaders strike this balance between automation and creativity. And let's see, Sandy, you were last, so you get first shot at this.
Well, I love what Dave said, right? Which is let it free us up to do the real creativity. Find a lot of joy in that. And I think that's going to be what's going to raise the bar on what the CSA miss and how do you strike out.
I love it. Okay. And now, Dave, your takeaway from what you heard today.
You know, as somebody who's been thinking about the concept of trust for decades, I'm inspired by this conversation. I think my key takeaway is it's about trust. It's not volume of content. It's that the teams aren't the ones that are winning and that will win aren't the ones who just create volumes and volumes of content. They're the ones who are thinking about buyer trust, brand trust, and in a world in which AI can produce anything, that they are keeping that as the highest order bit.
I love it. Okay, Jakki, final takeaway.
Yeah, so for me, it's all about like learning, testing, and learning. And I think what AI has given us is this new laboratory to experiment with. I think if you look at technology trends in the past, humans have always figured out, how do I leverage this? There's always fear at the beginning. Oh my gosh, is this going to displace us? But then it's like, wait a minute, how do we use this to become better? So I'm really inspired hearing things like the golden age of creativity is coming, right? How can we do things at a global level, local level that we could never do before without a ton of hard work, labor intensive, time consuming effort, right? So I think for me, I'm walking away more inspired to try some of the things that Sandy and Dave are doing as well and implement them on my team.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you, Jakki, Dave, Sandy. You're all amazing sports. Thank you, audience, for staying with us. To hear more conversations like this one and submit your questions while we're live, join us on the next CMO Huddles studio. We stream to my LinkedIn profile, that's Drew Neiser, every other week. Renegade Marketers Unite is written and directed by Drew Neiser. Hey, that's me. This show is produced by Melissa Caffrey, Laura Parkin, and Ishar Cuevas. The music is by the amazing Burns Twins, and the intro voiceover is Linda Cornelius. To find the transcripts of all episodes, suggest future guests, and learn more about CMO Huddles or my CMO coaching service, please visit renegademarketing.com. I'm your host, Drew Neiser. Until next time, keep those Renegade marketing caps on and strong.